What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 11 college football preview right here on the Bluebloods, man. And appreciate y'all tuning in. Hope y'all having a great day. We got to get right into it, man. We got one of the biggest Big Ten matchups of the weekend, man. But make sure to subscribe if you're new and like the video, and go ahead and comment your score predictions below. But we got number 19 Purdue traveling to number 4 Ohio State in Columbus. The Buckeyes are a 20-point favorite in a matchup that kicks off at 2:30 p.m. Central Time live on ABC. But this is a big one. We have another giant, another top five team in college football facing the top five killers of college football in Purdue, in a game that's going to give a lot of clarity to not only the college football playoff race for the Buckeyes, but also the Big Ten championship race in both divisions, which are both tightly contested as of right now. Let's set the stage before we get into this game, man. The Buckeyes coming in at 8-1, 6-0 in the Big Ten, coming off a big road win over Nebraska last weekend, finds themselves in the top four of the rankings for the first time this season. And now Ryan Day's team is looking to get another top 20 win on their resume to impress the committee, while CJ Stroud has a big opportunity to have his Heisman moment to further solidify his Heisman resume with a huge top 20 game that a lot of people in the country are going to be tuned into. Especially, he'll also get a lot of credit for doing it against one of the best defenses in the conference, and shockingly, one of the most stout defenses in the Big Ten. So, huge moment for Ohio State this weekend, and a huge game. And I expect this team to come in focused and motivated to make a statement. Now, for the Boilermakers, they come into this one 6-3, 4-2 in the Big Ten, and they're looking for their third top four win of the season as they travel to Columbus. And it's going to be on the back, of course, with this passing attack of Aiden O'Connell and wide receiver David Bell, which has really been making a name for himself this season and could potentially play himself into a high first-round draft pick in the NFL draft. Now, Jeff Brom is going to be looking to pull off another giant upset over the Buckeyes. This team is not going to be afraid of the moment, and I expect Purdue to come into Columbus fully expecting that they can pull off the upset this weekend. Now, the series stretches all the way back to 1919, but the Buckeyes lead the overall series 39-15 with two ties in the history of this matchup. But the Boilermakers did win their last matchup. It was that huge 2018 upset, 49-20 in West Lafayette, and they're looking to make it two in a row over the Buckeyes, while the Buckeyes are looking to avenge that loss that ultimately cost them a shot at the national championship that year. Now that we set the table, man, we got to get into the keys of the game. And for the Buckeyes, it's always hard because they do so many different things well on the offensive side of the ball. But this Purdue defense is one of the best the Buckeyes have seen all season. They defend the run and the pass extremely well, which is why I would imagine Ryan Day and this offense are going to want to keep this attack extremely balanced. So for me, the key this weekend is balance on the offensive side of the ball. Try to keep the Boilermakers defense off balance, use some unpredictable play call-ins, go against your tendencies, and that will give the Buckeyes a real advantage here, and really take away for what some of the things that Purdue does really well on the defensive side of the ball. We'll start with the rushing attack for the Buckeyes. It's been one of the more explosive in the country, averaging almost 190 yards per game on the ground, almost 6 yards per carry for the season. And they have a strong, strong running back room, especially when everyone is healthy and clicking at the same time. But it all starts with, in my opinion, I would say he's been one of the best freshmen this season, and that's Trayvion Henderson, man. Almost 1,000 yards rushing, over 7 yards per carry, and 12 rushing touchdowns. And the rotational pieces for Ohio State, they've been a bit banged up, and there's some questions about their availability at times. But Master Teague has had his moments, should be available this weekend after some injuries kept him out of some games this year. And Mayan Williams has had his moments as well, including that Week 1 explosive performance against Minnesota. So they have some guys they can rotate in with fresh bodies. But Trayvion Henderson, with his size, his consistency, and his ability to be one of those breakaway type speed players, he's going to be someone to watch. And we saw against Penn State, even if you slow him down early, he has the confidence in himself and the confidence of Ryan Day to continue to go back with him. 14 carries in the first half of that Penn State game. He only had about 20, 30 yards. The second half, 14 carries, and he had over 130 yards rushing and some big plays for the Buckeyes. So they're going to lean on Trayvion Henderson at the running back spot. But the rushing attack has been at its best when running outside or off tackle. That's where the Buckeyes running backs have really shined this season. Off the end, over 700 of their rushing yards came from there, over 7.5 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns, 34 first downs, and 22 explosive runs have come off the edge. These defensive ends for Purdue, which there are some studs mixed in that D line, are going to have to set the edge and play really, really strong football. Kenneth Walker had a big day last week. You cannot allow Trayvion Henderson to be his explosive self because for this offense, if the run game's clicking and CJ Stroud can get going, if you can't stop one or the other, they're going to put up a lot of points really, really fast, and Purdue's going to be in for a big shootout this weekend. Now, the other aspect of this offense, and one that I think deserves all the praise in the world, is CJ Stroud. He's established himself as one of the Heisman favorites right now. He's been playing some of the best football in the country over the past few weeks, and if he is on, this Buckeyes offense is one of the best in the country. Stroud has over 2,600 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, only 5 picks, of completing almost 70% of his passes. When you look at the NCAA stats, top 12 in the country in passing yards per game, top 7 in passing touchdowns, top 5 in efficiency, and top 25 in completion percentage. This kid can do it all, and he's efficient doing it. The number one thing, though, is how well he pushes the ball down the field for me. Almost half of his throws are from that intermediate to deep passing range beyond 10 yards down the field. And he's graded above a 91 per Football Focus passing grade in both of those areas, which is it's very impressive for such a young guy to have that type of confidence and ability to push the ball down the field. When throwing in those intermediate to deep passing zones, he's thrown for over 1,400 of his yards, 18 touchdowns, 17 big time throws, and 70 first downs generated. CJ Stroud can move the ball down the field, and that's something Purdue's going to have to limit. Explosive plays are really key for this Buckeyes offense. And so, if you can limit the explosive plays and make them drive down the field, you're going to have an easier time keeping the score manageable if you're Purdue. But if you allow CJ Stroud, Trayvion Henderson to create explosive plays all game long, the Boilermakers are going to be in trouble. So, that's the keys for Ohio State. Now, on the flip side for the Boilermakers, it should be obvious what the key is. Their passing game has been elite and has been the focal point of this Boilermakers attack. It's been the number one aspect of this offense. It was the key when they knocked off number 2 Iowa, number 3 Michigan State. Aiden O'Connell and this wide receiving core has made enough plays to win those games, and they were the key, and they will be the key again this weekend, and they will be the X factors. David Bell and Aiden O'Connell are the two names you need to know this weekend if the Boilermakers are going to pull off another top 5 upset this season. You look at what this offense is doing. They're averaging over 330 passing yards per game. That's 8th best in the entire country, and it's right up there with Ohio State in the top of the Big Ten. Now, there should be a little bit of opportunity, almost 250 allowed through the air for Ohio State this year. It starts with Aiden O'Connell, man. 71% of his passes have been completed for over 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a rushing touchdown. He leads the Big Ten in completion percentage, top 6 in yards when he didn't even start all the games this year, 6th in touchdowns, and 4th in the Big Ten in yards per game. This guy can do it all, and he's going to have to be accurate, efficient, and avoid turnovers this weekend. The number one thing you cannot do for Ohio State is give their offense more possessions or solid field position. You're going to have to play one of your best games of the season if you're O'Connell, because if you turn the ball over or you're inefficient and you don't control the clock or the pace of the game, you're going to be in trouble. They did not run the ball well last week and won the time of possession with over 35 minutes of possession time against Michigan State, who ran the ball really well. They're going to have to repeat that, because if you lose the time of possession battle, your defense is going to get worn down, and you cannot be inefficient on the offensive side of the ball and allow Ohio State to have 1,000 possessions this game. You're going to have to move the ball, be consistent on third downs, and those have been the keys to pull off these top 5 upsets for Jeff Brom's team. Now, O'Connell really thrives in just being a distributor, getting the ball to his playmakers and letting them make plays in space. Over 50% of his passes come in the short game, 0 to 9 yards down the field, and that's going to be the key. Can you allow your playmakers to make plays in space against this really athletic back into this Ohio State defense. On these short passes, O'Connell's completing almost 85% of them, almost 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, only 2 turnovers, with an 86.1 passing grade by Pro Football Focus, and over 55 first downs have been generated from his short game. That is the key for O'Connell, and it's because the wide receiving core is so good, and that's where the X factor for me comes in this weekend. This Purdue wide receiving unit is one of the most underrated in the country, and they have multiple guys who can do it, with 4 different guys having 3 or more touchdowns this season. But let's just be honest. This weekend, David Bell has to have another legendary game for the Boilermakers. He has established himself as arguably one of the favorites for the Bolitnikoff Award. He has been balling this year. 64 catches for over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, and almost 16 yards per catch. Number one in the Big Ten in receiving yards per game, number one in catches per game, and top 5 in receiving touchdowns. David Bell is the X factor. He had big 200-plus yard games against both Iowa and Michigan State. He is going to have that type of performance against Ohio State, which is a much tougher task than the first two. So David Bell's the X factor. You also have Payne Durham, Milton Wright, TJ Sheffield. All these guys have to have big games. I really like Milton Wright. I think he's the next guy up for the Boilermakers. 36 catches, almost 400 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But David Bell, Aiden O'Connell is the matchup. It is the connection to watch for the Boilermakers, and the passing game is going to be the key for the Boilermakers to pull off the upset. Now, for the matchup to watch, man, it's really for me has to be Ohio State's defensive line against this Purdue offensive line, because protecting O'Connell is going to be of the utmost importance for the Boilermakers, because you have to allow him to be that distributor and feel comfortable in the pocket. If you get him killed back there, the offense is really going to suffer, because you're not going to have the run game to really carry this offense in this one. And if Ohio State can disrupt this offense with pressure, it's going to take a lot of pressure off the secondary and allow Ohio State to play their defensive game they like to play. And it also can force O'Connell into making some mistakes, which is really key for Ohio State's defense this week. Now, the reason I picked this one is it's a strength versus really a weakness for this Purdue team, because this Purdue offensive line ranks 10th in the Big Ten right now in sacks allowed, with over 25 sacks allowed this season. And this weekend is going to be an extremely tough test for them, and the O-line is going to have to step up in a huge way. And no Purdue offensive lineman grades above a 67 in terms of passing and pass blocking grade this season, and it shows that they've really struggled to protect O'Connell at times. And this weekend, if they're looking to pull off a third top 5 upset, they are going to have to keep O'Connell's jersey clean on the road against a very talented front seven for the Buckeyes. The rushing attack has also suffered. Only 78 yards rushing per game and less than 2.5 yards per carry. No running back over 400 yards, and only 3 players have rushed for over 100 yards. That means if you don't protect O'Connell, I don't trust you to be able to run the ball this weekend. And that's going to be a problem. Can you win this game by being one dimensional? That's a big question. And this O line, though, Greg Long at offensive tackle has been by far their best offensive lineman, has not allowed a sack this season, only 9 total pressures allowed, and is the highest graded offensive lineman for the Boilermakers. But when you look at the 2 guys that I'm looking at to be key factors here that have to step up, it's Eric Miller on the other side of the tackle and Gus Hartwig at center. They're going to have big games. They've allowed over 6 sacks combined and over 30 total pressures allowed this season. You look at Haskell Garrett and some of these guys on the inside. Hartwig is going to have his hands full this weekend, and Miller, with Ohio State probably being 3-4 deep at defensive end, is going to have a big game. They cannot allow pressure up the middle, and you cannot allow these defensive ends to get upfield without being touched. You are going to have to step up if you're Purdue's offensive line this weekend. And for me, that's a huge thing to watch in this matchup. Now, the defensive line for the Buckeyes, man, what can I say? They've been one of the best in the country, first in the Big Ten in sacks this season with over 33 sacks this season, and it's really been a strength of this team. You look at Zach Harrison, 4 sacks, a 90.2 pass rush grade this season, 16 QB hurries. Tyleik Williams, 5 sacks, 11 QB hurries, and almost 90 pass rush grade. Jack Sawyer's there. Haskell Garrett on the inside from defensive tackle with 4.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, and 8 QB pressures. They could get pressure from the inside, the outside. The linebackers are great coming on the blitz. There's so many different ways that this Ohio State defense can be creative getting to the quarterback. That was the key to beating Penn State and Columbus just 2 weeks ago. That is going to be the key this weekend, is to get to Aiden O'Connell, get him off his spot, make him feel real uncomfortable back there passing for the Boilermakers. Now, given all this, man, this, is so hard because everyone's saying, man, Purdue is the top 5 killer. And for me, I just can't see Ohio State in Columbus overlooking the Boilermakers. And also, I think this Ohio State defense is too good for you to be one-dimensional. Purdue's going to have to try to run the ball, and I just don't trust on that. And I also think Ohio State is going to get after O'Connell. They're going to have to speed up that internal clock, make them feel uncomfortable in the pocket. And I just trust Trayvion Henderson and CJ Stroud, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. They have too many weapons. I think Ohio State pulls away in the second half over Purdue for a big win this weekend. I have the Buckeyes 42, Purdue 24 this weekend, in a big win for Ryan Day and this Buckeyes program as they find themselves in the top 4, and they know they control their destiny. They just have to win out. A 42-24 win for the Buckeyes over the Boilermakers is my prediction this weekend. Just too much firepower on offense, and that defensive line is going to have a big game this weekend, I would imagine, for the Buckeyes. But man, if you're new, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like the video, and comment your score prediction below. And if you want exclusive and extra Blue Bloods content, or just want to support the show, join our membership now. We got 3 tiers, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in to the Blue Bloods. We'll be back tomorrow with some more college football previews and college football content. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.